I am Luke. Next to me is Trevor. And I guess it's another week talking Bucks basketball. Um, Trevor, I did inform you that I wanted to ask you a question regarding the NBA. Not quite the Bucks, but I guess you can make it the Bucks. Um, Recent reports just came out that once LeBron James Jr. Enters the NBA, that LeBron James would be willing to a trade to go to whatever team he goes to. Would you welcome that to the Milwaukee Bucks? Let's say the Bucks had an injury or something, and they got down to a lottery pick, and LeBron James Jr. just happened to be there in the future. Would you be in favor of drafting LeBron James Jr. just so LeBron James could come to the Bucks?
No, no, because I feel like that's a short-term thing, right? Like two
Hmm.
years, and I don't think he's really even that good. Like I don't think he's the best son of LeBron's. I don't keep up on them too much, but I don't know. It seems like a two-year fix instead of what a draft pick should be, which is kind of your future, so to speak.
Right. What if that does come out to fruition? What team, or I guess what category of team, what couple teams, whatever, would you expect that to happen to?
Probably in Oklahoma City. That
That's
kind of
what I was
makes the
thinking.
most sense. Like, not only do they have the most picks, but they probably fall to him, and they can just splurge for on the salary for like 2 years, and then if it doesn't work, they're still okay.
Right, and
But I don't
yeah,
think any other team would do it.
right, and just to throw in, they have probably 1 million picks that they can trade away to get more players to put around both LeBron James and his son. Yeah, that's the only question I had. I thought of it as that report came out. I thought, maybe it'd be good to talk about it on the show, but I will just go through our normal routine. We'll talk games from last week. There wasn't too many of them. I know we alluded to that last show. But I guess to get right into it, on Sunday, January 30th, Milwaukee hosted the Denver Nuggets. The Nuggets won 136 to 101. On Milwaukee side of the ball, Giannis 29 points, 9 rebounds, 2 assists. The next highest scorer on the team was Drew Holiday with 14 points, five rebounds, and 8 assists. Other than that, Grayson Allen, Bobby Portis both had 11 points, and Chris Middleton had 9 points on 4 of 8 shooting. Trevor, is this Chris Middleton? Is this an outlier game in his season, or why was he only taking 8 shots this game?
Yeah, it was kind of a weird game. Like you lose by 36, you expect a domination, but the Bucks were only down really 8 at half. Um, I think for whatever reason, the game plan just was to not get it to Middleton. And I think overall, I think the game plan was horrendous. And I think that had a lot to do with it because, if he makes 4 shots, but he's taking 15, that's an off night. But when your second best player is shooting 8 shots and, you have DiVincenzo with 6, you have Grayson Allen, as much as I love him, he shouldn't be shooting more than Chris Middleton. Neither should Bobby Portis. So, I think it was just a poor game plan and execution of it.
Yeah, and then on Denver's side of the ball, um, uh, I'm sorry, Nikola Jokic, 18 points, 9 rebounds, 15 assists on 7 of 9 shooting. So that's kind of an uncharacteristic game for Nikola Jokic, right? We're getting used to these 25 point, 15 rebound, 10 assist kind of games from him. He's kind of stalked his name up into that MVP conversation. But the real leader, I guess, on this Nuggets team this game was Aaron Gordon. Finished with 24 points and 7 rebounds on 10 of 17 shooting, 4 from 8 from the 3-point line. In my mind, Aaron Gordon has always been, a solid player, a solid role player. Maybe not one that's, going to win you a championship, but one that may make you a playoff contender. That kind of felt like, this kind of felt like this may be one of the best games of his career to me as I watched it. Um, and so when you're only getting 18 points out of Nikola Jokic, to see 24 out of Aaron Gordon has got to be tough for Mike Budenholzer and the coaching staff. Containing maybe the back-to-back MVP and then having a role player basically beat you here. Is that the way you felt too, or did you have different thoughts on that?
I think I felt a little bit differently. Just hearing what Drew Holiday and Giannis had to say after the game, it was very interesting to me because they're never the type to call out anything. And they said right in the press conference, like our game plan was bad, kind of going back to the game plan. They just doubled the Jokic every time. And Jokic is one of the best passing bigs you could argue of all time at this
Ever, yeah.
point, right? Like he does it so well. So, he only had 18 points, but it was on 9 shots, 7 to 9. And they gave up 15 assists to him because, they just double teamed him, left his teammates wide open. You can't do that against a team like Denver. That should never be the game plan. If Jokic beats you, fine. But to your point, don't let these other guys do it. And that was the big thing. I think the story of the game with the Bucks. They give up 39 assists to Denver, and that to me, is more important than whatever Gordon does or Morris does or Will Barton does. If you let them get that many assists, get that many scores off of likely open looks or right off of direct passes, like you're not going to beat anybody, no matter who's on their team, if you're given that kind of play up.
Yeah, and just to add to your point here, Monte Morris had 18 points, Will Barton 15, Aaron Gordon 24, former Buck Bryn Forbes 14 off the bench, and my guy Bones Highland, great nickname out of VCU. He had 13 off the bench. So like you said, when Denver's best player, in this case, I guess other teams' best player, but in this case Nikola Jokic, um, it's great to see him have 18 points. But like you said, with how good he is at passing, you got to imagine that if Denver's hitting their shots early, it has to be a quick change, a quick reaction to whatever Denver's doing. I know obviously you don't want to not double off of Jokic and let him go for 40 because he's very possible of doing that. But it just felt like the adjustment wasn't there this game, and I think you hit it on the head with all the assists going around. The game plan was just felt out of whack this game. Trevor, do you think this is a matchup that we could see come a championship?
No, I look at the West, and um, I mean Phoenix. I think can handle them pretty well. I don't, Jokic is a tough matchup, but I think DeAndre Ayton can do a good enough job. For the Warriors, I think you could possibly use a little Draymond, maybe James Wiseman. I don't know what his status is when he comes back. Grizzlies can match up against them. Jazz can too. So the Nuggets, like if they were in the East, they'd be a tough team to beat because it's tough to match up against Jokic. But in the West, especially where they are right now, as a 6 seed, a game a game above the playing games, I just don't see them getting through all that.
Yeah, and then obviously in order for them to get through all that, and maybe this is an outlier on their season. I can't say I've watched a lot of Denver Nuggets basketball this year. Um, they shot 60% from the field this game, 53 of 88. They shot 54% on 3-pointers too, 23 of 43. 40 rebounds, out rebounded the Bucks by 7. Like we had mentioned, the assists, it was 39 to 23. So this overall, to me, it just felt like the Nuggets played better basketball than the Bucks. I think that's what it comes down to with who they had in the game, what the starting lineups were, and it's very hard to beat a team that shoots over 60% or more from field goal and over 50% from the 3-point line. So in my mind, I do think Denver's a good team, but in my mind, maybe this is a little bit of an outlier, and that we shouldn't expect to see this from the Bucks defense every single game. Anything else you want to touch on in this game?
Just that a lot of guys got minutes, which is kind of, I mean, obviously nice. I like what we saw to Wigginton. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure we'll talk a little bit more out of him, but the one thing that I didn't like about this game was this seems like a game when you're out of it in the fourth quarter, right? This game was over early. This seems like a game where you try to give as many minutes as you can to guys like Semi Ojeleye, Thanasis, Mamu, Rodney Hood, guys who have been struggling or haven't gotten a lot of time. Try to get them into some sort of rhythm, because I just don't see why Grayson Allen plays 31 minutes when half of those are probably when the game is already over, and Semi only plays 6 and doesn't get a shot. Like these are the games when he should be working on his stuff, so that you can see if he can contribute anything. Otherwise, just get him off the books, right? If you're not even going to play him in this game, I don't see what the point of him on the team even is. Anybody can fill a roster spot.
Right, and just to add to that, with the trade deadline, a handful of days away here, why not get these guys minutes in the waning part of this game to, maybe show other teams that these guys can do something, build boost their stock a little bit, and then dump them on someone who's willing to overpay for him right now. Um, but so to see the Nuggets come to Milwaukee, kind of a cross country trip, and see the team get blown out by 36, I would say it's not very exciting or not very promising. But like I said, maybe this is just an outlier game. I think Denver played an incredible basketball game. So kudos to them, and what do you do? I guess you move on, and that move on came in the form of hosting the Washington Wizards, who I guess you could argue is another cross country matchup with Washington coming to Milwaukee. This game, the Bucks defense stepped up, only allowing 98 points while scoring 112 on their end. Giannis led the way with the triple-double, 33, 15, and 11. Drew Holiday, 22, 5, and 2 on 9 of 16 shooting. Chris Middleton, 13, 5, and 3 on 4 of 12 shooting. So I guess, Trevor, before I guess to break down the game, to dip our toes into it here, Chris Middleton, once again, 12 shots still feels like not enough for Chris Middleton. I guess when you're shooting 4 of 12, you have to find other ways to contribute. But this guy put up, 40-point game in the NBA Finals. I mean, he's gone from D-League player to now multiple-time All-Star. It feels like he's now kind of entered that territory where if you're shooting 4 of 12, you should still somewhat have the green light because of what you've proved in the past. Everyone knows you're a good player. You're probably a top 25 player in the league right now. So, Trevor, this is back-to-back games with Chris Middleton shooting 12 or less shots. Is that something to look at come the final stretch of the regular season? Shouldn't say final
I
stretch, but
yeah.
towards the end of the regular season.
I think yes and no. Like to your point, you kind of want to shoot your way out of it. Um, and I think we've seen a lot of games where he doesn't do that, and some games where he does it for too long. It seems like the leash is a little inconsistent there. But for this game, I'm not too concerned about it simply because Giannis is 14 for 21, right? He was
Mm-hmm.
on, he usually is. Portis is 8 for 14, even though he's only 1 for 5 from deep. And Drew Holiday, like you said, 9 for 16, 4 for 5 from deep too, which is great. So, if you had guys like Holiday, Portis, they weren't shooting as well, then I think give them the green light a little more. But, if they're hitting, I think it's smart to just, and I don't know if it's gameplay or Chris or a combination of both, but I think it's smart to just continue to take your shots. Don't force anything because, you kind of got help. And defensively, we know he did his job because you look at the plus minus, which doesn't tell you everything, admittedly, but it was better than Giannis. So clearly, he gives you something offensively that doesn't just show up in the shooting.
Right, and I think Chris Middleton has really, I guess it's easy to say after they won the championship, but he really has, he's really found his niche, his role in this offense and in this Bucks team. So you have to imagine that he's going to know as better as anyone what he needs to do on the court, right? All NBA players are like that. Chris Middleton's been playing in the league for what 8-9 years now, if that. I don't know, somewhere around there. And to play with Giannis I'm sure it's pretty easy because most of the attention goes to Giannis, and all you need to do is just fill your role. Chris Middleton's role is obviously scoring the ball, but that wasn't working this game. He found a different role, and he was able to contribute while only making 25% of his shots. On the Wizards side of the ball, no Bradley Beal in this game, but Kyle Kuzma was the leading scorer with 25 points. It's always funny saying that Kyle Kuzma is the leading scorer. And Montrezl Harrell had 20 points off the bench. Um, Montrezl Harrell was working down inside come that third and fourth quarter. Montrezl Harrell's a high energy guy. He's going to get rebounds. He's going to miss layups, but he's going to grab the offensive rebound. He's going to put it right back up. We'll talk about trade stuff coming up here, but Montrezl Harrell may be high on my list for trade. Um, people coming in for a trade, trade acquisitions, I should say. Trevor, were you surprised that Montrezl Harrell played this well? I know we always talk about Bucks not having center depth. I guess that just changed. We'll touch on that in a minute. But 20 points for Montrezl Harrell feels like a lot. Is that credit to him, or is that credit to the depth that Milwaukee's lacking?
A little bit of both. When he came out of Louisville, I didn't think he'd be anything. I
Hmm.
don't think a lot of people did. But he's really been like a bigger version of Draymond Green, kind of. Like, it doesn't make sense why he's so good, but he
Right.
just plays hard, gives you that fire intensity, and he can put up points and do a lot. That. So, he's a guy I'd definitely be interested in. It will be interesting to see what the Wizards do because right now, obviously, they started the season really hot. They were the top team in the East for a little bit, very little bit. But they're in no man's land right now. Like I don't know what they're trying to build. Obviously, if Beal wants out, you got to rebuild. I think right now is when Harrell's stock is the highest, but how much are you willing to tank, right? Because Thomas Bryant can't play a full season, so if he gets hurt, like we saw in this game, ironically, and Harrell's gone, well, you really don't have a center. So it's going to be interesting to see what direction they take because they need to make a move by the trade deadline.
Yeah, and just to talk, I guess, Wizards basketball here for a little bit. Is Spencer Dinwiddie someone who may be on the move? And they signed him in the offseason. I think they gave him a big contract from Brooklyn. I think they were under the impression that their season was going to look more like the first part of the season. I guess it doesn't hurt when Bradley Beal, a 30-point scorer, goes down. But do you see Spencer Dinwiddie? Maybe they listen to trade talks for him, or they try to shop him a little bit for some picks. Is that in the realm of possibility?
I mean, I think it is. I just don't know who takes him because, to your
Yeah.
point, he's got such a big contract. Like, this seems like a guy that will be there for the entire contract. For Bucks fans, kind of like a Mirza Teletovic, or kind of how Nikola Mirotic felt in the playoffs. Like guys that you give big contracts to, and you can't do anything with them because even if people want them, that money, nobody wants that.
Right. I almost wonder. I know it's very tough to predict trades in the NBA and get it exactly right. But just talking about fit, if Brooklyn does end up moving on from James Harden, I'm almost wondering if a reunion would work in Brooklyn with Spencer Dinwiddie, to play that obviously that guard role with the whole Kyrie Irving situation, and we saw what he did in Brooklyn in the past. But that's fantasizing, obviously, and I'm sure it won't happen. But let's talk about Kyle Kuzma for a second. Maybe the most inconsistent player in the NBA. He obviously got a hot start to his career out in LA, when he was playing with Brandon Ingram and Lonzo Ball and all that young talent out there. He was the one that LeBron kept in the trade for Anthony Davis, and maybe had the worst year of his career last year. Now he's bouncing over to Washington, where he's been up and down all year. In this game, 25 points. He kind of plays that stretch four role. If Kyle Kuzma is scoring 25 points on a stretch four role, you have to imagine that other players are. Is this something that Bucks fans should be concerned about? That, like I just said, if Kyle Kuzma is scoring 25 as a stretch four role, other better players are probably going to score that as well? Or am I just overreacting to Kyle Kuzma because he's a very fun player to overreact about?
A little bit of both. It was tough to tell really the game plan watching this, and I think a lot of it was changed because Thomas Bryant, their center, got hurt in the middle of the game. So obviously that changes things. But looking at like Kuzma, some of the shots he was taking, it's like whatever. If it
Right.
falls, it falls. I can't do anything about that. And so there were at least two shots like that from inside the arc. So now let's say he just misses those two, right? Not even out of the realm possibility. Suddenly, 7 for 19 with 21 points. Still not a bad game, but if somebody wants to take 19 shots to get 21 points, you're not too concerned about it. So I think a little bit because you shouldn't be giving up 25 and 11 to him. But at the same time, when he was on the court, the Bucks did a pretty good job offensively as well. So it's hard to debate that either.
Yeah. Um, so this is obviously a big win for the Bucks. I mean, any win against an East team right now is a big win for the Bucks. I know the Wizards are down under 500, 24-28. Good for 11th in the East right now. But I don't know. I don't know about you. This game felt like it should have been a win. It felt like the Bucks got the job done against an inferior opponent, and it's like move on to the next game. I felt comfortable. I felt comfortable with this win. I felt very, I guess, happy with this win. Did you reciprocate the same feelings, or did you have any different thoughts on this game?
A little bit of the same, right? It was kind of tight near the end. You need those games, obviously.
Hmm.
Like, I'm not going to beat a dead horse with that. But the thing that just dumbfounded me is you have a game like this. There is no reason in hell that the Wizards should have 20 free throw attempts and the Bucks have 9,
Hmm.
much less that only 2 people on the Bucks shot free throws. Like, if Giannis is, first of all, Giannis gets fouled pretty much every time. I know you can't call it every time, but if he's taking 21 shots, there is no way he should be only taking 5 free throws, right? He should be shooting, like, in that case, if he's shooting like that, 17 shots with like 11 free throws, something like
Hmm.
that. So it's just like a dumbfounding game, but at the same time, to only, shoot 9 free throws, the other team shoots 20, shoot 31% from three, and still win by 14 points. No matter the opponent, you got to be happy with it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't think there's much else to touch on in this game unless you had anything else. I guess before we talk some 10-day contracts and some trade talks, let's finish up last week's games with the game last night. Milwaukee had traveled out to Portland for, I guess, yet another cross country matchup where they played the Trailblazers without Damian Lillard. Bucks won by 29, 137, 108. Bucks side of the ball, Giannis 29, 9 and 6. Bobby Portis 30, leading scorer for the team, four rebounds, 5 assists, and another Chris Middleton 14 points, 3 rebounds, 7 assists on 6 of 13 shooting. So obviously the story here is Bobby Portis, right? Um, this was maybe Bobby Portis' best game as a Buck. Do you feel that way, or am I just kind of overreacting? Maybe because of how much I love Bobby Portis.
It's definitely up there. Like, I think there have been a couple games where he's had like 25 and 11.
Hmm.
So I guess it just depends on what you emphasize more, because he had 30, so more points, but less rebounds, but more assists. But it's definitely up there. It's definitely going to be, at the end of his time here, most likely one of the top 5 games.
Yeah, and then just to touch on Portland side of the ball, they have so many injuries going on right now. Probably what 3, 4 starters. Damian Lillard, Cody Zeller. I guess they just traded for Eric Bledsoe. Larry Nance, he's been down. Naz Little, who's a rotation guy, they've all been down. Yusuf Nurkic was, I'm sorry, CJ McCollum, 17 points, 7 of 18 shooting. Yusuf Nurkic, 11 and 10. Other than that, Ben McLemore 19 off the bench, and Anthony Simmons 19. So nobody in that 20 plus range points wise. We talk about Buck's depth at the big man position. Yusuf Nurkic only had 6 shots, 11 points. I know he's not much of a scorer, but this felt like a game where maybe he could score. He could flash his scoring chops a little bit. Um, but I don't even know what to say about Portland. I mean, you can talk on it if you want to, but this just felt like like the Wizards, a better team beating an inferior opponent. Kind of kicking Portland while they were down last night.
Yeah, and this game was weird because Nurkic, I think it was just like 3 years ago, he was one of the best big men. They had
Hmm.
Zach Collins over there as well. They were in the Western Conference Finals and they looked good. And to play a team that has Nurkic and for Giannis and Portis to get basically whatever they wanted in the paint, it doesn't make sense. Nurkic had the worst plus minus in the game, minus 36. He should. I don't know how their post defense is not better. I'd have to
Hmm.
rewatch this game. I know that they rolled out a small lineup, but you'd gotta expect a lot more from Nurkic, at least defensively.
Right. And just to add on that, I'm sure it's tough when someone like Larry Nance goes down. Who's so good. In the paint. He's just a slasher. He can create plays. He can create disruptions on defense. But you're right. If Nurkic, wants to take, be that center for Portland, that Damian Lillard, I'm sure it's much different playing without Damian Lillard too. But if they want to be that franchise center, they need to score, more than 11 points and take more than 6 shots with Bobby Portis basically guarding you, and I guess Giannis switching on you and stuff like that. But you're right, Trevor. I mean, what else is there to say about this game? Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
Just the impact of Giannis shooting threes effectively. Like
Hmm.
we obviously know it does better, but in that game, Giannis hit the first three shots that were all 3-pointers. Looking at the Blazers bench after that third three, they were like, "Oh Lord, like what are we gonna do?" Um, but just the impact of that, right? Like it was still a close game, when he was hitting that. Obviously, it was super early, but just how much that opens the rest of the floor. Obviously, Bobby Portis got some good looks. Everybody was getting good looks, and this is a great game where you're able to tamper minutes. Giannis 25, Middleton and Portis 24. Drew Holiday had the most with 27. That's what you really love to see. Um, Even though you don't have any back to backs, you'll love to limit those minutes.
Right. And I guess that, that speaks to maybe Budenholzer's ascension as the Bucks coach. He was very frugal on minutes a couple of years back. He kind of opened that up a little bit come, the last couple of playoff runs and kind of start the season. And I guess with All-Star break looming, he kind of resorted back to that. It's just nice to see that influx that, we can win both ways with guys getting a ton of minutes and, kind of spreading the minutes around a little bit. But Trevor, before we move on to previewing this week's games, let's talk some fun stuff here. Let's talk some All Star stuff, some 10-day contracts, some trade stuff. So we'll touch on the All Star right away. Chris Middleton obviously was picked for an All Star reserve. Um, did he deserve this All Star nod, Trevor? I know a lot of people were up in arms about LaMelo Ball and Miles Bridges not making the team. I don't know if that's because they're kind of the new kids on the block kind of way of thinking. But in your mind, is Chris Middleton one of the best 10 players in the East right now? Did he deserve this All Star spot?
Yes and no. Like there are also Miami fans talking about Tyler Hero, and you look at the stats. I think Middleton literally beats him in like 10 of the biggest stat categories,
Mm-hmm.
including not only efficiency but points. But Middleton has a very good case, right? Like kind of as the Batman on this team, but Drew. I think to be honest, Drew Holiday deserved it more than him. That's not a knock on Chris Middleton. It's just that Drew's defense is elite. His offense has taken a huge step up. We mentioned the one game, 4 for 5 from three. Right, this is a guy in the playoffs who shot the three ball like Eric Bledsoe,
Mm-hmm.
90% of the time. So, I think Drew probably should have got the nod, but as long as one of either Drew or Middleton is in, I don't think you can be too mad as an NBA fan because there's no doubt one of the two should have been in.
Okay. And I was just going to ask you, without, I guess, without Bucks bias in you, are you okay with Chris Middleton there, or would you like to see someone like LaMelo Ball instead? I know it's tough because Chris Middleton, kind of gets classified as that guard forward. So who do you really slot in as a guard spot, as a forward spot? But do you think someone like LaMelo Ball or Miles Bridges should have been in over him?
It's so tough, and I think the thing that killed the Hornets is how they play and how their team is built. Like the Hornets have five guys that average over 16 points a game, which is fantastic. But when you
Mm-hmm.
look at the stats of Bridges, 19 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists per game. Even though they kind of have a committee approach, the stats don't speak on his true value. And same thing for Lamelo, right? He's got 19, 7, and 7. That's fantastic, but again, with that committee approach, 3 turnovers a game, you know, for the box score analyst, it doesn't pass the test. So although I think Lamelo should have gotten in, I don't think it's as bad as if he was, the leader on a team, quote unquote.
Yeah, fair enough. Um, so you had alluded to this obviously earlier in the show. I'm talking about Lindell Wigginton. How where his contributions have come into play here. What have you seen out of him that you've been impressed by? I guess what have you seen out of him that maybe could be room for improvement? Or I guess if you just want to talk on it, just give me your overall thoughts on Lindell Wigginton in a Bucks uniform.
I think he can have a role, right? I don't think he's only played 4 games, obviously no starts, but he's a young guy, 23. Out of Iowa State. He's a little undersized, which kind of makes
Hmm.
it tough to where you slot him because he's only 189. But he hasn't missed a shot. all season, right? So that's kind of
Right.
hard to knock on him for. 14 points, 3 assists, a block, 2 steals, a turnover. He's kind of reminds me of what you'd expect from Javonte Smart when he picked him
Hmm.
up. Like, we don't need anything special, just be decent, hit down shots when called upon, kind of sit on the bench and know your role, so to speak.
Yeah, and I was gonna actually add into that and talk on that too. It feels like he's playing his role right now. It feels like he just needs to not play his role, if that makes sense. Just go out there and do what Budenholzer's asking, do what Giannis is asking. I'm sure come the Bucks. We'll preview this next game, but they play tonight on a back to back. I'm sure he may see a little bit more minutes tonight. It's always tough playing back to back on the West Coast. So yeah, I mean, there's not much to say about him. He's a 10 contract day guy. I mean, he's doing his job. Like you said, he hasn't missed a shot yet, which is great. If Buck fans, if you're getting bored of the season, it's kind of getting, right before All-Star breaks, always kind of that monotonous time. Keep rooting for him to make shots. It'll be fun to do. And I mean, you can even turn it into a drinking game. If he misses a shot, you have to finish your drink, whatever. But we don't endorse binge drinking on the show, by the way. But you're right. He's just there to play his role. Nothing. I don't think there's much more to say on that. One thing to say is the Bucks got one of my favorite Buck ever back with Greg Monroe. Everyone knows. Everyone who's a Bucks fan, I'm sure, loves Greg Monroe. They all have some sort of relationship in their mind with him. Moose brought back. He was kind of that guy. What was it, 4 or 5 years ago, where you just throw him in, he would bang down low. He played physical defense. He make layups come. Whenever they see the ball. Trevor, is this suitable for this bench depth thing that we're talking about? Is Greg Monroe suitable for that?
I think it's huge. I think it just depends on
Yeah.
how they can do with his contract. He's a little, he's standard size, I guess, 6'10", but he's a big guy at 250. You're not expecting much out of him, but just having that body, right? Like, I love Bobby Portis. He can't guard a true center.
Hmm.
So if they can find a way to do that with Monroe, he can be kind of like a cheap knockoff version of what Don Maker was in the playoffs for the
Hmm.
Bucks. Like, Don Maker, yeah, was obviously hitting threes like no other, but just that defense aspect, the hustle, getting the crowd going, that's really all you need. That's really all we've been talking about, getting those rebounds and stuff. So it's nice to have him back. If you can work him in, that would be great. Um, Definitely not a guy you want as a starter, but
Right.
if you can get Brook back and bring him off the bench at the center, that puts you ahead of a lot of teams at the five.
Yeah, and then I think the most important part of that is you can move Bobby Portis back to his primary position as that kind of stretch four who can bang a little bit down low on the offensive side, which I think would work absolute wonders. I guess we saw that in game six in the NBA Finals, I should say, throughout the whole finals. How Bobby Portis kind of excelled playing that stretch four who can bang down low when he needs to a little bit. But just to touch on that, you had mentioned that maybe get someone like Greg Monroe back, someone that the fans have shown that they absolutely love in the past. With basketball, I think is a sport more than maybe any that momentum is like such a huge factor in the game. So when playoff time rolls around, and if Greg Monroe's still on the team, you have Greg Monroe and Bobby Portis getting the crowd going. That'll be a fun playoff run for the Bucks.
Yeah, and especially with Greg Monroe's past, or path, I should say. Like, he was a guy that obviously wasn't going to work with the Bucks, so we traded him. But everybody kind of expected him to land on his feet, and
Hmm.
instead he jumped team to team, was out of the league for 2 years, came back. Has played a total of 6, 10, 11 games since the 2017-2018 season. So, or 2018-2019, excuse me. So he's a guy that has not taken the path traveled by often, but I think that, to your point with the crowd, that's going to make it even more crazy.
Yeah. Um, I think we hit, and I should mention that in the game against Portland, Monroe 15 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, 3 of 7. So I mean, that's probably what they're going to ask him to do for the remainder of the season, right? Is don't do too much, just come in and play basketball how you know how to play basketball, score points, get rebounds, get the ball to the vets, and Greg Monroe's a vet, so you got to imagine he knows how to play basketball, right?
And hey, Greg Monroe, a little trivia fact: third in Bucks history in player efficiency rating, franchise history. So,
That's an interesting stat. um, I mean, any other players you want to talk about in terms of 10-day contracts, anything like that? All right, let's talk some trade stuff. It's always fun to get fantasy here. Trade deadline is on this coming Thursday, I believe, February 10th. So that is 5 days away. We've been talking about it all year that maybe the Bucks look at trying to go after that center depth. Maybe grab another scorer, veteran scorer for the bench. We just talked about Greg Monroe there for a second. Trevor, I guess before I ask you if you have any predictions from trades, I guess I didn't prepare you for this either, but I know that you like thinking on the fly here. Give me three names that maybe you would be interested in the Bucks looking at.
ooh,
I guess you don't have to do
that's
three, just whoever comes up to the top of your head.
that's a tough one. I think it really depends what they're going to do with Greg Monroe. Like if
Mm-hmm.
they plan Greg Monroe to be able to stay here past the 10-day, I don't know if you really need to do anything, right?
Yeah.
Like if you can get a deal on a center, that's great. But from all that I've seen, Brook is progressing well. Even, if he doesn't come back, Monroe is better than what we have. And so that would be an improvement in itself. So you don't have to force anything. But one of the names that I'm most interested in, we'll have to see with his injury. I think Indiana really screwed themselves with it. Is Miles Turner?
Mm-hmm.
They could have got a load for him. They got a little too cute, flew too close to the sun. Now he's got a stress fracture in his foot, and they are 19 and 35 and going nowhere fast. So it's he's a guy I'd like maybe if you get him cheap, but with that injury diagnosis, it's tough to see if he'd even be cleared for the trade to go through.
Yeah, he was on my list that I was going to bring up. I talked about Montrezl Harrell, to start the show. One other guy who maybe a little bit of a fantasy is Charis Laver from Indiana. I know it's always really hard to trade for guys within your division, right? Because you play these teams so much. Just look at NFL. It really never happens where teams trade within the division. But Charis Laver, I think, would be fun. I think it's going to be real tough to get him, but if you can land Charis Laver, I think that solidifies that the Bucks are maybe one or two in championship odds. If you can get someone who can put up 20 points off the bench nightly, I think that helps so much. It helps to get the reliance off of Giannis, to get the reliance off of Chris Middleton, and know that you have that microwave coming off the bench to help to help build that lead. But Trevor, is there what else do you want to talk about trade stuff? Do you have anything else in your mind? It's kind of
Um, you know,
a free swim forum right now.
Yeah, one of the guys that I think could be actually very interesting. The Lakers are thinking of shipping him. Um, I think Dwight Howard would be interesting. I don't think he's any good anymore. Like nobody here thinks he's what he was in 04, 05 or any of those years. Right? He's 36, but he just gives you that defensive presence, that rebounding presence. He hasn't been anything crazy this year, 5 points, 5 rebounds a game. Um, but just that presence, that body in there, like you don't need much from him. You don't need him to shoot that much, but just have a guy that can fill up 15 minutes a game in the center. Lakers are probably going to ship him for next to nothing. I think that's a pretty good deal for him.
What would you throw for him? A second round pick?
I feel like you could almost, depending on how the Bucks are looking at their roster, I think you could almost throw, you know, dare I say, like a DiVincenzo in there, and not DiVincenzo for Howard straight up,
Mm-hmm.
clearly, but DiVincenzo would help the Lakers. Really, anything would, but like DiVincenzo for Howard and maybe 2 seconds or something like that. Because DiVincenzo isn't getting you much. His trade value is plummeted. You have plenty of guards. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know what he brings you that other guys don't.
Right. And here's one for you. Would you trade Dwight Howard for Semi Ojeleye straight up? Obviously,
In a heartbeat.
logistics.
I
Yeah.
In a heartbeat. I mean, Semi Ojeleye, I didn't expect something out of him, but he lowered that bar to the lowest place on earth. I mean, he has been horrible.
Yeah. All right, I'll give you one more. Wes Matthews for Dwight Howard straight up.
I don't think so. I think Wes Matthews plays a good role. I don't think you need a center super bad if you plan on keeping Monroe. So I don't think Wes Matthews is comparable, so to speak.
Okay. Just to speak on Dwight Howard on my part, I've always been a Dwight Howard fan. I know he carries, I guess, a lot of baggage with him, and maybe not necessarily his fault. More that the media made a huge thing out of when he went to LA the first time with Kobe Bryant, and then his career kind of derailed after that. He put up some good seasons in Houston, maybe 7, 8 years ago. Then he's kind of been bouncing around, and like you said, kind of playing that 10 minute a game center kind of guy, 36 years old. My only worry is that Dwight Howard, like I said, he comes with a lot of baggage. To his fault or not, who knows? It would hurt to see him come in and kind of screw up chemistry. I don't think it would, but the media behind it maybe come in and throw a couple of wrenches in what feels like the Bucks have a groove going on. That's my only worry. I love him as a player. I think he would definitely be a contributor, but outside factors make me question it a little bit and throw up maybe half a red flag.
Yeah, and it would be interesting too, because like that was kind of what we thought would happen with Boogie as well in terms of
Hmm.
the media, and media kind of left
I
him
guess,
alone,
yeah,
right? It was kind of weird. So I wonder, and especially with all the stuff on the Lakers with Russell Westbrook, I wonder if it would almost be the same thing. Like I'm not saying it would
maybe.
be, you know, the media cycle has been weird this season for guys that have usually been hated or now for some reason beloved.
Right. I think that's kind of transitioned to Kevin Durant. I mean, everyone hated him. Now it feels like everyone loves him. Maybe that has to do with everyone hating James Harden and Kyrie Irving over his whole vaccination status and everything. But shout out Kevin Durant. I've always liked Kevin Durant. But anything else we need to touch on before we preview games? We do have some underdog picks we can do tonight too, as well.
Absolutely.
So Bucks are, like I mentioned, they're on a back-to-back. They play tonight on the West Coast. They're at the Clippers. Bucks are currently favored by 4 points, with the over/under set at 226.5. Um, Clippers obviously down Kawhi Leonard. It sounds like he may not return this season. Paul George, where you're going to get out of Paul George. He's going to put up shots. He's going to put up points. He's a solid player. A lot of people like to give him a lot of hate, including me. I mean, it's fun to do, but you have to give him credit where he's due. He's a good player who can probably lead a Clippers team to like an 8-17 maybe. Is he hurt, Paul George?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's out, which is weird. I don't know why the line is 3.5
Yeah.
points with him and Kawhi out.
Okay. All right. Scrap everything I just said about Paul George. Um, I guess Reggie Jackson is probably the guy we should talk about for the Clippers. Averaging just short of 17 points a game, about 3 and 4. I mean, he's not a superstar. Reggie Jackson's been in the league for a while now. I mean, you know, to me, this game from Reggie Jackson, you could either get 10 points out of him or you get 30 points out of him. It's kind of a wild card in my mind. But Trevor, give me a little preview on the Clippers. What should Bucks fans be concerned about? What should be looking forward to? Where should the Bucks excel in this game?
This game to me just I don't know how the Bucks lose this game. Like
Yeah.
they always have this trend of losing games that they should have no business losing. Zubac is also day to day. If he doesn't play, I mean, I don't know who plays for them in the paint. I mean, we're now talking about Isaiah Hartenstein or Marcus Morris on Giannis. And then that doesn't even cover who's going to be on Bobby Portis. So this should be a weird game where the Bucks have the edge inside. Reggie Jackson is good. I don't know how they have the firepower to match the Bucks. Like this is a game where I'm going to be hammering the line of 3.5 for the Bucks or the spread.
Hmm.
I just don't see how the Clippers come out ahead in this game.
Yeah. So just to talk on the spread here for a second, it opened at 5, and it moved all the way to 3.5, or I should say it moved to 4 now. Um, that's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I don't see that. I'm kind of with you. I'm kind of in the mindset that the Bucks may win this game by 20 points. I know it's on a back to back, but like you said, the Clippers don't really have the firepower to keep up with the Bucks, especially if Budenholzer is giving everyone kind of that 27-minute cap. if you're getting guys fresh in and out the whole game, I think the Clippers are gonna have a tough time, being able to keep up. Not necessarily because they're not, they're tired or anything, but I don't think that they have the talent to. Um, so if I'm a betting man on this game, I think I'm taking the Bucks spread, and I think I'm taking the Bucks money line. I really do think the Bucks, kill the Clippers here. Over under 226.5. Do what you want with that. I don't think I would bet that. It's always tough to bet on a back to back. But if I had to say something, I don't think the Bucks, score a ton of points, especially with that back to back game. And I don't expect the Clippers to score a lot of points because they don't really have that many good players on their team. Are you kind of in the same mindset as me?
Yeah, and it's tough too because like if we kind of touched on the Clippers, I don't know where their offense is going to come from. If their offense isn't clicking, the Bucks could be up 80 to 50 in the late in the third and rest everybody. And
Hmm.
so then the under is definitely hitting. So it's tough to tell where this offense is going to come from, but at the same time it's the NBA, so that line is nowhere near safe.
You're right. Also, shout out to the NBA again for scheduling 4 games in 7 days, with 2 of them coming in 2 straight days.
And it just doesn't make sense either. Like the Bucks have still to this point played so many more games than other teams in the East.
Hmm.
It doesn't make sense why they play 4 games in 7 days and then play like 3 and 9. It feels like.
Right. So let's hit some underdog picks here. I don't have anything for the Clippers. All that shows all Bucks on here. So we'll run through these quickly. I'll give you a 2-for-1 here, Trevor. Giannis 28.5 points, over under, and then Giannis 45.5 points, rebounds, and assists.
28 and a half points. Damn. That's really
Just
tough.
just to throw
Uh,
my thoughts on it. If you're taking the over on 28.5 points, you're going to take the over on 44.5 points, rebounds, and assists, right? Because what is that, an extra? I don't even know math. 14 to add on to that. That feels,
yeah.
real easy for Giannis.
Yeah, I'd say the under on both. It's tough though, right? He
Hmm.
averages 28.9 per game. I think this is a game where the Bucks get out to a big lead early and just kind of rest everybody. Only question is with no center, how crazy does Giannis go in the first, half?
Right. Yeah, that'd be interesting because this feels like a game where Giannis could maybe score like 25 points in the first half, right? Um, I don't think. I think we're both kind of questioning this a little bit, and I don't think, if we're giving out picks that either one of us may even want to bet this. Um, But like I said, if you're taking the over on Giannis 28.5 points, not saying that I am, but if you are, you should probably take the over on the 44.5 points, rebounds, and assists, because it feels like Giannis gets 14 of those in the first quarter alone, in most games that he plays. Let's do Chris Middleton. It's another twofer. 18.5 points. We'll start with 18.5 points, and then we'll go 29.5 points, rebounds, and assists.
29, you said, points,
Yep,
rebounds, and assists.
29.5.
I'm okay. I'm gonna go over on both. I feel like
Think so.
it's stupid reasoning, but he's due,
He's
and
due.
we see Chris do this all the time. So
Right. Yep. I totally agree with you. We'll do another. We'll get a threefer with Drew Holiday. 16.5 points, 22.5 points plus assists, and 1.5 3-pointers made.
I think I'd go over on all three. He's shooting with confidence. He averages 17.7 points per game, and he averages about 7 assists per game. Um, but that's again with the game flow. This is a tough one to bet on, but I'd go over on all three.
Yep, I agree with you. And like you said, maybe this is a game where the Bucks get up early and they sit some guys. You got to imagine Giannis would be a big component of that. So once Giannis is out of the game, points have to come from somewhere. Right now, they're coming from Drew Holiday. Um, with coming from Drew Holiday, like you mentioned, Chris Middleton, he's not going to only score 12 points a game for the rest of the season. So that like you said, he's due. I agree with you on everything we said so far. We'll do another twofer that I think I am going to take the under on both of them, but it's Bobby Portis 13.5 points and Bobby Portis 7.5 rebounds. I can speak on this right away. I'm gonna take the under 13.5 points. I do think that Greg Monroe sees a lot more time in this game. He saw, what did I say, 15 minutes last game. This feels like a 20-minute game for Greg Monroe. against kind of another inferior opponent. Just let him go out there, run, see what he has in him. Really, the Bucks don't need to win this game. It'd be nice if they did, but this feels like a game just to get Greg Monroe back into it, get that chemistry back going back with Drew Holiday, with Giannis, with Chris Middleton. So I think that the one person that affects is Bobby Portis. I just don't think he sees the time in this game to get 14 points and 8 rebounds.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what kind of not formation, but what lineups they roll with
Mm-hmm.
when it gets to the end of the game, because obviously you don't want your reserves in for 40 minutes and at injury risk. So I wonder if he's almost a guy that they sub in for Giannis and just tell him to basically take up a role.
Mm-hmm.
Um, 13 and a half is low. I want to touch it, but I'd probably go under as well, especially on the rebounds. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
this is a team rebounding game where, Chris and Drew get like 7, everybody gets a couple.
Yeah, especially going up. I know you had mentioned it there. With Zubac, if he does play, he's a rebound vacuum. Um, you, which leads obviously less to more or less rebounds for Bobby Portis. But keep your eye on that one if you're out betting that. Like Trevor had mentioned, Zubac is game time decision right now. The last one of the day is Grayson Allen, 9.5 points. So really, probably Grayson Allen 4 threes.
Yeah, I'd go over. I think he probably gets probably pretty safe 3 threes and maybe 2 layups or dunks
Mm-hmm.
somewhere. So I feel like
Yeah,
that's an over, and he'll get plenty of game time for sure.
right. And I was going to say you get plenty of game time. It's not hard to come by 10 points for someone who can shoot the ball as well as Grayson Allen. That's the underdog picks for tonight. The Bucks stay on their the West Coast road trip with a game staying right in LA against the Lakers at LA. Um, the Lakers currently 26 and 28, ninth in the Western Conference. Bucks 33 and 21, third in the Eastern Conference. Um, Everyone, if you follow my Twitter at Luke Rhymes, should know my thoughts about the Lakers. I absolutely hate them. I hate LeBron James, hate Russell Westbrook, hate Anthony Davis. They are not playing good basketball, right? I mean, it's simple as that. Um, do you think that this trend continues for LA? And the Bucks coming off a championship, they're going to get everyone's best shot, right? But this feels like the Lakers are kind of, I don't know. I know it's still early in the season, but it feels like they're kind of running out of time to turn this thing around. You're always looking, oh, the Lakers are definitely going to win this game. They're going to win this game, and they just don't. Um, this game, I believe it's on TNT, so I mean, millions of people will be watching this game. What should we expect in this game, Trevor? I don't. It's hard to preview this game because the Lakers should be good and they're not. So what do you think? What do you think about this game?
Lakers are one of those teams like the Raptors and the Bulls and the 76ers to the Bucks. When you play them, they're going to be at their best. It doesn't matter what defense you play. It's just how the ball rolls. For whatever reason, they just shoot well. So I'd expect Russell Westbrook to have a renaissance game.
Right.
I'd expect Anthony Davis to continue to look great. I'd expect LeBron to get his old ass 20 free throws, even though he takes only jump shots. It's going to be a frustrating game. I think it's close. I think the Bucks should win, but it just feels like one of those games where Russell Westbrook drops 5 threes on you. Everybody says, "Hey, look, the Bucks suck." When in reality, Russell Westbrook just finally decided to not be a YMCA player anymore. So
Right. So let's hypothetically, if Los Angeles gets their season back on track and they get to that team that everyone thought they were going to be at the beginning of the year, maybe we get a Bucks Lakers finals matchup come June. Talk to me about matchups. Obviously, probably Drew Holiday and Russell Westbrook, right? Where does Giannis play? Anthony Davis, LeBron James, or do you have anyone else? You're thinking that LeBron James would have to try to stop LeBron James.
yeah, it's so tough because I don't think even the Lakers know what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think I would really question the matchups. Russell Westbrook, I don't. I think you could very well argue um, you put Chris Middleton or Drew Holiday on LeBron James. We've seen Drew Holiday in the post. His post
Mm-hmm.
defense is fantastic. You don't have to worry about that. His overall defense is good. He'd be a problem for LeBron. Chris Middleton plays some solid defense. He's not the number one thing, but I think you put one of those two on LeBron, put Giannis on AD, and then you got Carmelo, Stanley Johnson, Malik Monk, Russell Westbrook. Throw whoever you want on those guys. Now, I
Yeah.
don't I don't think Middleton's good on Monk, but you have options. However, if the Lakers decide to move AD to the 4 and Dwight Howard or DeAndre Jordan to the 5, then I think you start to have a couple of problems with their bigs that Greg Monroe just probably can't fill.
Right, and this obviously feels like the spot where keeping PJ Tucker from last year would have been nice to kind of play physical and do the dirty work against a LeBron James, a Kevin Durant, a Luka Doncic, someone like that. Which the Bucks kind of missing this year, but they kind of gave that up for Grayson Allen, and Grayson Allen's had a great year, a great one of his best years in his career. What's interesting to see about the Lakers coming into this game, everyone talked about how old they were. LeBron James mentioned it before the season started. They have the third fastest pace in the NBA, which is higher than the Bucks. It's not much, but it's third. It feels like the Lakers should be close to the bottom. Is this game the Lakers want to try to get into a track meet against the Bucks?
I don't think so. Like I think the Lakers, I think that's part of the problem. They play fast,
Right.
um, and they play out of control. Like Russell Westbrook isn't driving anymore. Like the other night against the Knicks, he in a fast break situation where he's stride for stride with Julius Randle, you expect him to explode and slam it down, and he slows up and tries a layup and gets rejected.
Yeah.
So it's weird because the team's playing fast, Russell's playing slow, and both those are the exact opposite of how they should play. So I think if they get into the track meet with the Bucks, they're done because I don't see how their big men are even conditioned well enough to keep pace.
Yeah. There's no line out on this game yet, obviously. Previous matchup, just to look to this, Bucks took down the Lakers 109-102, November 17th. I think we talked about that game pretty much in depth. Um, I don't know. Maybe a line on this is probably it might be Bucks by 3 points again, something like that. In that case, I think I would take the Bucks. I do think the Bucks are a better team than the Lakers. I think they're just taking over. I would take that 3 points just for a brute force of a Bucks victory over the Lakers.
Yeah, the one thing that annoys me about this game is the Lakers, that's their next game. They don't play
Hmm.
again. That seems extremely stupid to me. I get schedules don't always line up, right? We're not dumb, but it's got to be closer than that. It's a little ridiculous.
Yeah. Anything else you want to touch on for this game?
Just that LeBron hasn't played the Bucks. He was missing last game, um, so that was obviously a big loss for them. Or was it? Maybe LeBron would have screwed up their chemistry. They were. I don't want to say rolling because they were 500 after that loss in that game, but they were looking a hell of a lot better than they are now. So that'll
Yep.
be something interesting.
Yep. Our last game to preview, uh, and actually the Bucks' last game of the week is Thursday. It's a finals rematch. They go to Phoenix, where they take on the number one team in the West. Phoenix is 42-10. They have 10 losses for their first 52 games, which is obviously incredible. Does this Suns team to you? Does it feel like the Bucks kind of the last couple of years, I guess more before this year, where they kind of just dominated the regular season and coming off of a playoff loss, kind of a heartbreaking loss, where they kind of come out and dominate, and everyone's like, oh, this is the Bucks year in this case. Oh, this is the Suns year that they're going to win the finals. Is that how they feel to you, or do you think the Suns are actually a legit team, best team in the NBA right now?
I think the record says it, but I think what were the Bucks? I think they had like 50 wins before they got 10 losses a couple
Hmm.
years ago, lost in the Eastern Conference Finals. Against teams above 500, 19-7, that's great. They're 1-2 in 3-point games. And so that tells me that one, they have not had a lot of close games, and B, they're not very good in close games.
Hmm.
Granted, Bucks are only 1-0, so I'm not saying the Bucks are that great at it, but they haven't, like, they're good, but they just haven't shown me a lot. Against their own division, they're 5-4, and that's the toughest division. That's where you should be winning, right? That's where
Right.
you should be stepping up, and they're not. So I'm not completely sold on them either. I think they're a great team, but I think to say they're even, I think they're top three in odds, definitely top five, but favorite is a stretch for me.
That's fair. Just to talk on the Suns, Devin Booker. I mean, all Bucks fans should know the Suns by now, but Devin Booker, 25, he's averaging 25 points. On the injury side for them, a lot of actually rotational players are hurt for them. Frank Kaminsky's out with a knee injury. Abdel Nader, who he finds roles every now and then, he's out with a knee injury. Cam Payne, who hurt the Bucks in the finals last year, be a game time decision with a wrist injury. Dario Saric, who was at one time in consideration for Rookie of the Year, he's out with a knee injury. And Landry Shamet, who's an absolute sniper. You remember him from his time at Wichita State. He's out with an ankle injury. Buck side, obviously, Brooke Lopez and George Hill still both out. So this will be the second game in a row the Bucks are on TNT. Be another, I'm sure everyone will be hyping up a conference or a finals rematch. I don't know what to think about this game. I agree with you that the Suns probably aren't the best team in the NBA, right? But they are a good basketball team, right? Whoever has Chris Paul is going to be a good basketball team. Like DeAndre Ayton, we saw him kind of develop into a starting center in the playoffs last year. Mikal Bridges is always a wild card. He could go for 25, or he could go for 2. So I don't know. It'll be definitely a fun game to watch. Of course, I don't know that I would gamble on this game. This would be a game for me to just more sit down and enjoy watching.
Yeah, and this will be. I think the Bucks get killed in this game. I don't think it's because they're bad or anything, but the Bucks had a long time off from Tuesday to Saturday this past
Mm-hmm.
week, and then they go Saturday, Sunday, Tuesday, all on the road, big games. It sounds stupid to say, but it's a real thing emotionally and mentally, the impact, the toll that it takes, all the lights, all the interviews, all the practices, all on the road, back to back to back after being off for so long. It just seems like a game where they go to Phoenix and this team is just tired, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't play again after till Portland the next Monday. They just want to go home. And it seems like one where Phoenix has revenge on the mind.
Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of what happens. Phoenix just goes ballistic. Looking at their schedule, I don't know. Let's see where Phoenix is. They play Tuesday and have a day off Thursday, so they're not too much better. They're coming back from Philly, but it just seems like one where the fans want blood. They do well. Everybody overreacts and says the Suns are going to win the finals and not lose a game. So I'm not too worried about it.
I agree with you. It'll be a fun one to watch. Obviously, like I've been saying, a finals rematch. But like you said, you're not really expecting much for a Bucks win here. Let's say the Bucks do win this game. It's the third leg of their Western Conference Finals. Bucks win this game. Where does that solidify them as the best team in the NBA, or does it move them to top 3, or based on you know let's say a 2-3 week or a 2-1 week here? Where would you place the Bucks in your power rankings?
Power rankings is tough. I think if they win the three, I think you'd have to put them first in the East. Right
Mm-hmm.
now, they're only a game behind the Bulls and the Heat. Nobody's taking the Bulls seriously, at least until they get their guys back. They have plenty of injuries. They don't touch the Bucks. The Heat, they have not been great recently. They have kind of a weak schedule, so they don't scare me. But I think I don't know where to put them exactly, but I think the top four is them, Memphis, Golden State, and Phoenix. The way those three other teams are playing, it's hard to argue they're not three of the top teams in the NBA.
Which is totally fair. I guess we forgot to do this last week. Maybe that's a fault of my own, but Western Conference road trip here, continuing on Clippers, Lakers, Suns. Trevor, what are you expecting the Bucks to go record wise in this, and what would you be happy with them going?
I'd expect them to go 2-1. I'd be happy with 2-1.
I,
They have a pretty brutal schedule, so you got to win majority.
I agree. I think we're both on the same boat that probably get the 2 wins over the LA teams and maybe go down big to Phoenix. which is fine because all three of these teams may be playoff teams come the end of the season. So to get this experience now, to get this going now, it's I think it's crucial for the Bucks to, at worst go 2-1. But I think that's everything I got, Trevor. Maybe I have one more thing that just popped into my mind. All-star events. I don't know that we know that any Bucks are competing yet. I don't think they've announced 3-point competition. I know there was some rumblings. I don't know if they're true or not, where the skills challenge has turned into a 3-team kind of thing, and then maybe the Antetokounmpo brothers. Is there any validity to that? I haven't read into it, so I don't know. But I mean, that would be pretty fun to watch. Watching our star guy out there competing on behalf of the Bucks.
Yeah, I think it would be cool. I don't know how much validity it is to it, but I think the NBA needs to shake it up.
Hmm.
Although I like it, I'm partial to the old skills competition. I don't like that it's
Yeah,
basically who can,
who
throw
can make a
balls
three? You're
away
right.
and then make a three at the end. Like that's
Yeah,
just that doesn't make sense for a skill, so to speak. Um, so I think that'll be nice. But if it doesn't happen, I wouldn't be too surprised, right? It doesn't seem like the NBA likes to change stuff up too much in terms of All Star Weekend.
right. Let's talk about All Star Weekend for a second. You do you remember the shooting skills challenge where
Yeah,
you take a shot from the block, shot from the elbow, 3-pointer? That was great. They need to bring that back.
they absolutely do. That's actually what I was thinking of with the skills challenge. It's
Yeah,
basically like that again, but bring people in, all that from the teams, the legends. Go for it.
yeah. For those who don't know, if you're listening, the shooting competition used to be, I think it was one current player, one legend, and one WNBA player, or maybe a WNBA legend. And you take a shot from, I don't know, the block, the wing, the 3-pointer, and then a half quarter. It's always great, you time it. But I think that's right up there with slam dunk and 3-point competition for fun events. Um, Trevor, I know both of us watch a lot of sports. The NFL's kind of mixed in their own kind of idea of skill showdown. NHL did, I don't know if you watched it on Friday, was it? They had a fun All Star kind of weekend. Is the NBA All Star Weekend the best All Star weekend?
It has to be.
Yeah.
I think the NFL had the right idea. They just did it too late, right? By the
Hmm.
time they changed it, nobody cared. And so I think that one's out the window. MLB is boring as hell, right? It's the home run derby and nothing else.
Yeah.
There is really nothing else. And then for NHL, it's good, but the NHL has a marketing problem and not really their fault.
Hmm.
So although I've seen some nice, small things, I think at the end of the day, until something big changes, their big draw will always be the playoffs and nothing else.
Right. And you're right. The home run derby is fun for MLB. It's probably one of the best events. I think I'd still take the slam dunk contest over. I think the slam dunk contest is the best event. Um, but to wrap up the show, anything else you want to touch on, talk about for in terms of Bucks basketball?
Yeah, yeah. The Bucks have a tough schedule, but so do a lot of the teams in the East. It seems like a lot of the top teams are going to run through Phoenix. So keep an eye on the standings. I think they're going to move a lot with the Nets' 7-game losing streak. The difference between the 3 and the 6 seed is now 3 games for the Bucks. So we talked about 2-1 on the road trip. They come back against Portland. They go 3-1. We're talking 4 or 5 games between them and the 6. Probably right up 1, 2, 3. Probably see a little more separation in the East. Not as much as the West, but start to see a little better playoff picture probably.
Yeah, and I guess you just mentioned the Nets there, and that jolted something to my mind. Obviously, reports are going around that James Harden may be traded to the 76ers. I think I have a pretty good idea on your thoughts of James Harden as a basketball player, but are you more how I don't are you more, I guess, uncomfortable with James Harden on the Nets or on the 76ers?
I think it's kind of a cop out answer, but it depends on what the 76ers give up. I
Yeah,
think if the Nets get Ben Simmons for him, they're done. That's not going to work at
right.
all. You can just double team pretty much KD, stand in the paint against Ben Simmons, you win the game. Congratulations. For the 76ers, obviously, I think it would make their team better, but I don't think the 76ers are going to take just a 1-for-1. And
Hmm.
with the way Harden has played, I don't think they have to. So then I think it comes down to who else the 76ers give up. They don't have many draft picks. Are they going to give up a Tyrese Maxey, a Shake Milton? Because if they give up those guys, how much are you really gaining? Um, converse to how much are you losing, right? Because you lose all that depth. So
Right.
I think it depends what they give up. Most likely, I think both teams lose.
Fair. Totally fair. I think I'm in the same realm that I don't know that I'm any more uncomfortable if James Harden joins the Sixers than I am with him on the Nets. So I guess that's our show this week. BuckShots with Trevor and Luke. Follow us on Twitter at Luke Rhyme, at TrevorLand2. Follow at Flurry Sports. Follow everyone out there. Pushing a lot of content right now. I always talk about shows at the end. We don't have a lot going on. Zach and Jake got Flurry Sports podcast going. Other than that, we may have some college basketball shows. I'll tease maybe a bracket. We'll break down the bracket once it comes out, which is only really 4 or 5 weeks away. But other than that, we'll get some Super Bowl content out. We'll get some betting content out like normal. But give everyone a follow there, and we'll try to keep you up to date with what's going on with sports and betting trends and stuff like that. So for all of us here at Flurry, we appreciate you watching. I'm Luke. Trevor here. We'll get out of here. We'll talk Bucks basketball next week. Have a good week, everyone.